car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis Wright and host David Lamb.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. We appreciate you spending your Sunday evening with us. For the next half hour, we have a panel of experts assembled and we'd love to have you be a part. You can submit questions for them and we'll be sure to just pass them along. You can call, text, email all throughout the program. On the bottom of the screen, there are ways that you can join the conversation. It's always better when you join us, so please take advantage of this opportunity to get your questions to actual attorneys. The conversation being led, as is often the case, by Josh Wright of the firm Hollis Wright.
Hope you're doing great today.
Doing well.
We are honored today. We're lucky and honored because we actually have a star on with us today.
Right. There's no doubt.
No question. We've got Ken Riley on the show, who's been doing a show longer than we've been doing a show.
How about that?
Law Talk over on Fox, and they do a great job and have done an awesome job for years. And I called Ken. Ken's a personal friend of mine, and it's funny because people always ask me, well, don't you compete with that show? And I said, well, Ken Riley's one of my very good friends. We're officers and trial lawyers together and do some other things. And I called Ken. I said, I think it'd be a great idea if you would come on and honor us and be one of our guests. So thank you for being on to be able to talk.
Thank you for having me. I think it's a great idea. You know, these shows we were talking, and you think about competition and things like that, but it's really not. It's really about providing information to the public that they wouldn't ordinarily get, and in my estimation, is really good information, because I know you have some really prominent, great guests on, and we try to do the same on our show. So I commend you for getting us together.
Well, I'm glad we were able to do it. We're talking about an interesting topic today. I'm kind of excited about this show. It's why lawyers matter in society. And, you know, we are sometimes the butt of jokes, and lawyers are...
Some of the best I've heard have come from you.
Well,
actually.
There's no question.
Yeah.
If you can't poke fun at yourself, what can you do in life, right?
Yeah.
You know, lawyers are appreciated, they're reviewed, they're also criticized at times for good reason. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the importance of lawyers in society, because there are some interesting statistics in the course of getting this show ready. Ken and I have kind of worked up. Number one is we have over 1 million lawyers in our country. That's a lot of lawyers. That's a big industry. Yeah. And when you compare us to other large countries like Japan, they have one lawyer in every 10,000 people. We have one lawyer in every 250 citizens. So we've got a lot of lawyers out there. And the net is that although lawyers may be revered by some and be criticized by others, lawyers shape the focus of our laws and the way that we resolve conflicts and disputes in our country. And so I know Ken and I have committed ourselves and our families to this type of industry. We're proud of what we do for a living, and we're going to be talking a little bit about it today. I think people think, Ken, let's just jump off from here. People think that a lot of times lawyers only file personal injury cases, and that really is not the case at all.
No, in fact, the type of work that we both do makes up a very small percentage of the overall legal world. You know, there are business-on-business cases. In fact, that makes up the majority of cases. Then there's child custody cases. There are adoption cases. There are criminal cases. There's disability cases. There's just a world out there, but a lot of people are exposed to, and it's because there are commercials on television, and then, you know, shows like this that are sponsored by your firm, my firm. But really, you know, in terms of what's really out there, there's a whole world of lawyers that specialize in so many different areas, not just in personal injury and products liability and wrongful death.
You know, David, we've done a show on the civil justice system and kind of the importance of the civil justice system. This show's kind of similar to that. You know, in short, you know, we resolved our disputes, you know, a couple hundred years ago with guns and with things at the county square, right?
Right.
And today we have a system, the civil justice system, that lawyers function in on a daily basis that gives us the ability to resolve our disputes in a civil way. The laws that are created in our state and in our country, lawyers play a significant role in those laws, in the creation of those laws that help society function. In fact, Ken and I oftentimes are down at the legislature as part of our duties and responsibilities with the Trial Lawyers Association, which is now the Association for Justice, in helping to create and form the laws by which we practice law in. And so, lawyers play an important role in resolving disputes in the civil justice system civilly, but also in creating the laws that we have.
Honestly, though, from you two, why do you think in some circles, and you were talking about the jokes, where does the blame lie in why some attorneys and at times the profession is disparaged?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to exposure and what you see maybe in the media. I mean, hopefully if you're out there watching, you've never been sued. Hopefully you've never had to engage the civil justice system because that means that something negative has probably happened to you. But when there are cases like the McDonald's hot coffee case comes to mind, everybody hears about that case. And the thing about cases like that is the media takes them and they put certain facts out there because they're sexy for the viewers. It sells time. And a lot of the facts, for example, in that case that were reported just were not accurate. Right. So when you go through that particular case, and if you actually start peeling the onion skin back, you learn that the jury that was on that case that heard all the facts really did something that was probably admirable, which is create a situation that made McDonald's take a scalding hot situation, giving it to their consumers day in and day out, and made it so that now people aren't getting burned on a regular basis, which is what was happening in McDonald's. And that's just one example.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's another thing too, and we sometimes talk about it on the show. In the system that the lawyers on this side of the bar practice in, the way that we award damages is monetarily, and we don't throw people in jail when they cause a car accident, or they cause a product to be defective, or somebody falls off of a roof at work and is badly injured. We don't put those people in jail. We monetarily resolve disputes through financial resources from one entity to another. That's sometimes, whenever monetary issues are involved, I think greed gets involved, and I think that's another component to why lawyers sometimes, on the, if you will, on the personal injury side of things, are looked at with a little disfavor. But at the end of the day, lawyers are really functioning within the very system that we have. Like I said, we could still be resolving things with gun duels, right, or fists, or with the other things that were done in the past. And now we do it monetarily, and we, I think, do a good job of trying to evaluate claims and monetarily resolve them in an appropriate way. And most of the time it's not the lawyers that decide what the monetary value is. It's either a judge or it's a jury, as Ken was talking about, a jury of our peers. These are 12 individuals that are in a community of the person that was injured. One final thing to mention is really only 5 to 10% of the cases that are filed in the courts right now are personal injury-based cases. Everything else is related to the topics Ken talked about: adoption, divorce, business-on-business disputes, collections, etc.
All right, time for us to take our first break of the evening. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation on why attorneys matter. We'd love to have you submit your questions. If you have a question, we'd love to have it and pass it along to our panel of experts. Here's how you can get in touch with us: call, text, email. Also, a reminder, we have attorneys standing by right now to take your call. So take advantage of this opportunity. The firm of Hollis Wright is also on Facebook, if you'll search that term, and on Twitter it is Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. More of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Carter Clay with the law firm of Hollis Wright. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WVTM 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of this show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other specific legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family member. Or simply contact us by going to WVTM13.com and click on the attorney's link. Now, we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTM 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. I feel like this is one of those shows, everything you wanted to ask an attorney, but we're afraid to ask. Now's the time to ask, and the opportunity to do so. Call, text, email, join the conversation. Why attorneys matter, our topic of conversation tonight. Josh?
Let's talk a little bit, Ken, about this concept of pro bono work and public assistance. I know your firm is involved in it, our firm's involved in it. We're encouraged by the State Bar to be part of this kind of stuff. Just explain a little bit about how that works in general and why we have it.
Well, I think that's one of those things that doesn't get advertised enough. You know, pro bono work doesn't get you in any newspapers or on any TV shows. But I mean, not just the American Bar Association, but our local bars, the Alabama State Bar, the Birmingham Bar, not just promotes pro bono work, which pro bono work is work for people who can't afford the legal services that are so needed, okay? And in Alabama, for example, I think that 75% of lawyers participate in pro bono programs. If anybody out there is in a situation where they feel like they need some legal services, they need some help, but they just can't afford it, because let's face it, legal services can get expensive. But just because you're poor doesn't mean that you don't get affected by issues that involve the needs of lawyers. So, you know, I would encourage anybody out there to access the Birmingham Bar Association, birminghambar.org, Alabama State Bar, and there are a number of entities, charitable entities that support the Birmingham Bar and the Alabama State Bar that will allow, you know, a lot of access to justice where otherwise it wouldn't be.
Can I ask, why do you two are passionate about this? Why is it important for attorneys to provide pro bono work, you think?
Well, I think, you know, providing free legal aid to people that need it the most is just something that I think is a kind of a benevolent desire. You know, the show that Ken does, the show that our firm does, this is really a form of pro bono work. It is helping educate the public. I mean, remember, one of our mottos is you can call, text, or email us, and Ken does the exact same thing, and we answer every question. We don't allow questions not to be answered. A lot of times we'll have a lot of questions and it may take a little time to get to somebody, but we answer every question for a reason. We're trying to provide that free legal advice. 99% of the calls and questions that come in have nothing to do with the type of work that we do on a daily basis, but if we don't know the answer to them, we can get them in touch with somebody that does to help lead, guide, and direct them through the process. One of the more joyful things that I've been a part of in my practice and that Ken's been a part of in his practice is the Alabama Civil Justice Foundation, which we're a part of. People may not realize this, but when money is put in trust accounts of law firms, it sometimes will sit for months and months and months before it's distributed to the places that it's supposed to go. The interest that accrues on those trust accounts sometimes is significant in market, David. That money cannot be recouped by the client and it can't be recouped by the lawyer. We have entities like the Civil Justice Foundation and there's a group through the State Bar, the Law Foundation, that take that interest income and they allocate it to good groups for access to justice, to children, to social work entities. And Ken and I are on that board and are officers in that group, and we help direct where that money goes. And you won't even believe the smile that you get on the face of somebody who is receiving a grant from the Civil Justice Foundation, from money that came from lawyers' hard work and sweat and equity. And it's just a great thing. So I think lawyers just in general want to be a part of something greater than just simply practicing law, and that's an opportunity for it. That's kind of what I see. Yeah. You know, we talk about contingency fees too, and I think that's interesting. Let's talk about that for a minute because, you know, in the arena you're in and the arena I'm in, A lot of folks can't afford to hire somebody, but we have contingency fees that help them.
Right. Well, you know, if you are in a situation where you've been in a trucking accident or been injured by a medical device, where you're going up against companies who have lawyers that operate at $300, $400, $500, $600 an hour, and that just happens. So you have to be able to combat that. Mm-hmm. And most people cannot afford to pay $350 an hour when after 10 days worth of work, the attorney's fees might be $20 or $30 or $40,000. So our system allows what Josh referenced as contingency fees. And what that basically means is that lawyers like Josh, like myself, and a lot of other good lawyers in Alabama do is they take the case on a contingency, which means that we're not going to charge anything up front. In fact, we're going to front the expenses, which can be substantial. We're going to front that up front, and we're going to take the risk. We're going to believe in ourselves, believe in you, believe in your case, and at the end of the day, if for some reason your case doesn't work out, we're not going to send you a bill.
Right.
Okay? But if we are successful, and when we are successful, you'll simply pay a percentage of whatever the recovery is. So
this is why this guy has had a TV show for 5 years. He can explain things like that. He's
right.
good. He does a good job of it, and that's why I'm glad to have him on today. When we come back, I know we're getting ready to go to break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the high-profile cases that lawyers have been involved in that have really formed kind of the basis of some of our laws and the way that we function in our society today. I think it'd be a good topic, and it will help educate some of the viewing public.
That'll be good. We'll do that as we step aside for this quick break. We're coming back to the final segment of the attorneys. As we head to break, again, a reminder of how you can join our conversation and get in touch with the firm of Hollis Wright. Call, text, email, find them on Facebook as well as Twitter. Stay tuned. The final segment of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Firth with the law firm of Hollis Wright. It's easy to take safety at home or at work for granted, but crime can happen anywhere. That's why for this week's Legal 411, we're answering the question, is your employer liable if you are a victim of crime at work? Generally in Alabama, employers cannot be held liable for the criminal acts of a third party, including physical assaults, robberies, shootings, burglaries, or sexual assaults. This rule is to protect employers from being blamed for acts that they couldn't predict would happen. However, there are two major exceptions to this rule. One, if your employer knew or had a reason to know that the criminal act was likely to occur, or two, a special relationship exists between your employer and the criminal. For example, if you work in an area of town where crimes frequently occur at your job and your employer has not taken steps to make sure that your work area is kept safe, the employer may be liable if a crime happens to you. Or if the person who commits the crime is a coworker that your boss knew had a criminal background, your employer could also be held liable. Our advice to you is to be diligent. Take measures to be safe. Check your surroundings. Keep your vehicle locked at all times. Have someone walk you to the car if you leave the office late. Even check with the police department to learn if you work in a high crime area. If you do, check with your employer to see what measures they are taking to keep you safe. Communicating with your employer is generally the best way to make sure you are on the same page with them. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is always free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer the questions you face on real issues every day. And remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thank you for watching The Attorneys.
Welcome back into the attorneys. Appreciate you being with us. The final segment here, just a few minutes remaining, but plenty of time for you to get your question into us. Call, text, email, and join our conversation. Josh?
You know, David, I want to talk a little bit about, when we went to break, we were talking about, let's go into some of the high profile stuff, and Ken and I will talk a little bit about that. But just off camera during the commercial break, we were talking about the concept of what makes our legal system in the United States different from others. And one of the beauties that have always been proud of our legal system is you see the humane way in which our military and our troops are required to treat adversaries compared to what you may see in other countries. And Ken made that point off camera. I think it's a great one. The system currently is set up so that we make it extremely difficult to convict the guilty. But there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is to ensure and maintain that an innocent man or woman does not go to jail. And that, to me, is one of the cornerstones of the system. And I know it's something that you and I practice on a daily basis. We may not be doing criminal work, but that concept bleeds over into the civil world a lot. That, to me, is what makes our system great.
Well, it is. We are trying to describe to juries, when we try cases, the difference between a criminal case and a civil case. We often use our hands and say, well, in a civil case, the burden of proof, and we've all heard that term, but the burden of proof is to tip those scales in our client's favor. And if that happens, then by law, we should get a verdict. Well, in a criminal case, everybody hears about beyond a reasonable doubt. That's where those scales are really tilted almost 100% in favor of guilt. Well, there's a reason for that, and that's because you don't want to leave just some doubt whether or not this person is guilty of committing this crime. Some doubt. I have doubt about all sorts of things. Yeah. But if it's reasonable doubt and the proof is beyond that reasonable doubt, then that person likely committed the crime that he or she is charged. So our system affords that, whereas I think that a lot of places don't. You've seen on TV where in some foreign countries you go before a judge or maybe a tribunal, and if they don't like the kind of shoes you're wearing, you're going to jail or you're going to be beaten or something like that. So it's really a great system. I think it's probably underappreciated a lot of times until you're involved in the system.
Right.
I worked through a group and went to a career day one time at a local high school, and I was at the booth for lawyers and attorneys and kind of the career that you could have if you want to be a lawyer. And I got a great question from a young girl that was a high school student. And it was, what would society be like if we didn't have lawyers? What would you see? And I faltered in my answer at that time, and I've never forgotten that question. I've always kind of thought through it, and without lawyers, society's totally different. I mean, think about it. We have mortgage contracts for the home that we may own, or rental agreements if people rent with landlords. Without lawyers, those contracts would not have to be enforced. Think about the harassment in the workplace that would go rampant without lawyers involved. Think about the discrimination and the changes in the laws since the 50s and 60s and 70s. That lawyers participated in crafting those civil rights laws to protect people, not just in the workplace, but in society in general. Without lawyers, we would not have the ability to force companies to do the research and development they need to make sure that products are safe that we put into our body and ingest, and that we operate in vehicles on a daily basis. And so, I could go on, and I know Ken could too. I faltered when I answered that question initially because I think that I wasn't prepared to be able to answer that question of why is the thing I do and that I've committed my life and my family to in my industry, why is it important, and what do we do in society? And I've never forgotten that question,
right.
and now I'm prepared to answer that. So maybe she's watching and now I'm able to answer it, but I tell you, lawyers play a significant role. There have been some extremely high profile cases from drugs and cars and whatnot. Let's just talk just for a moment about some of that stuff. I'm trying to remember some of that stuff. What are some of the things that you can think of?
Well, I always go back to, and I think it's the most recognized example, which is the Ford Pinto case back in the 70s, and that was a situation where Ford actually made a decision. They knew that this gas tank was placed in a place that was dangerous. And they made a decision, a conscious decision, not to move that gas tank or protect that gas tank, such that when there were collisions from the rear, these gas tanks would explode. And they knew that it was going to kill a certain number of people, but they elected not to make the change, which would have been a very small amount to make a change. And it's examples like that that have made products, every product out there, safer for the public. It's lawsuits against Pinto, which have caused all the manufacturers to move those gas tanks into a position that is safer. Now, can you create something, a vehicle that's completely crash resistant? Well, that's not feasible. But these manufacturers, if they put in the research and development dollars, they can make a vehicle. And if you compare a vehicle from 1980 to a vehicle that was manufactured last year, they're two completely different machines.
No question. Look in the drug context, Vioxx, and the chronic pain management drug that is the largest mass tort settlement in the history of our country. Look at the Firestone tire issue. Both those involved companies with knowledge that evaluated profit over safety. Mm-hmm. Lawyers were right there to step in to assist individuals that have been injured and making those products safer in the long run.
Sadly, we're just about out of time.
But I want to do 3 of these shows like that.
We could. A lot of ground to cover, great information. But from the both of you, kind of what would you leave our viewers with tonight relative to the subject?
I would just say that lawyers, you find lawyers in your Sunday school classes and in your churches, and you find them at the PTA meetings, and you find them coaching football and baseball and in Little League. So lawyers put a great deal of time into their community, and I think a lot of that is probably not recognized. Right. I have great friends who are not lawyers, but I have a lot of great friends who are lawyers, and I just have the utmost admiration for lawyers, and that's what I would leave the public with.
Josh?
Yeah, and I think I'd just end with, I have committed my life and my family and my wife and children to this industry. I believe in it and I stand behind it. I'm very proud of what I do for a living. With any industry, there's good and there is bad, and the 1% to 2% that do it the wrong way give a black eye to the people that do it the right way. Just recognize that there are some lawyers out there that are doing it the right way, working hard and providing good service.
Appreciate both of you being with us. Great show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us as well. We're all done, but we'll be back next week. Here's how you can continue to get in touch with the firm of Hollis Wright. Thanks again for being with us. We'll see you next week right here on The Attorneys.